Hey friends, happy Sabbath. Welcome back to another day in my kitchen. I try to keep Sundays fairly restful, but today was pretty go in the kitchen. I had to make brunch for my family, and then I wanted to go ahead and get supper made and in the Instant Pot so that when we got home from church tonight, I didn't have anything else to do but put my pajamas on and let my family serve themselves. My original plan was to make either blueberry muffins or blueberry scones because, as you know, we are in the midst of the pantry challenge and I am trying to use up what we have. And we have quite a bit of frozen blueberries in the freezers. So I wanted to definitely make something with blueberries. I decided to go with scones because it's faster and easier. That was the main thing. And then my other plan was to make cheese grits and probably mix in some scrambled eggs with them. A lot of times when I make cheese grits, which is definitely a Southern thing, I will make it with some sausage, some breakfast sausage, but we don't have any sausage. We didn't have a whole lot of eggs, but then I realized we don't have any grits. So I had to pivot a little. I did have some crescent dough in the refrigerator, so I am going to make one of our very favorite breakfast casseroles at the moment, and I will show you that in a minute. Any recipes I use that I actually have a recipe for, I will include in the description below. Anytime I have multiple things to make in the kitchen, I try to order my time. I think through the steps and what things need to sit, what needs to go in the fridge, what takes the longest in the oven, and I make a plan accordingly. So the first thing I wanted to do was get the scone dough made so that it could go in the freezer for about 10 or 15 minutes. You really want that to be nice and firm and really cold, if not semi-frozen, before you stick it in the oven, or it could spread too much as it bakes. I get all of my other ingredients well incorporated, and now I am folding in my blueberries carefully. They are still semi-frozen. I rinsed them really well so that it wouldn't turn the scones completely purple or pink. So I get this all mixed up, and then I'm going to stick it on a shelf in my freezer while I prep the breakfast casserole, make the icing. But first, I am making a gallon of chocolate milk. Because we store our milk in half-gallon jars, I'm going to make 2 half-gallon jars of chocolate milk. This consists of, for a whole gallon, I'm using half a cup of sugar, half a cup of good quality cocoa powder. This is organic fair trade cocoa powder, unsweetened, that you can get from Walmart. It's actually significantly cheaper, and I mean I want to say a fifth of the price of the organic fair trade cocoa powder you can get from Azure Standard. That stuff quadrupled in price over a 6-month period. I was dumbfounded and really, really grateful to find this great value organic fair trade at Walmart. Anyways, then I add 2 generous pinches of salt, which I think really make it. This is the best chocolate milk I've ever had in my life. It certainly makes a huge difference having raw milk. The more cream in there, the better. And then I add a generous splash of our homemade vanilla extract, and I pour just enough water that has just been boiling over the cocoa powder, sugar, salt mixture, just enough to use the immersion blender to get everything well incorporated so that there's no chunks or gritty pieces. Then I pretty much just eyeball it and try to pour equal parts into both jars. I always, at the end of the jar, pour a little bit of milk into it, put the lid on, and give it a really good shake because we don't want to leave any of those yummy ingredients behind. It's almost like a jar, a bottle of Hershey syrup that's left. You don't want to leave anything behind. Now I pour that back in the jar, shake them both up, and store them in the fridge because we're going to serve this with our brunch once everything is ready. Now it's time to make the breakfast casserole. This breakfast casserole is so incredibly simple. It's really versatile. You could add whatever cheese you want or leave it out if you don't want to add cheese. It starts with a tube of crescent dough. I always use Great Value brand, just regular crescent dough. You roll it out, you have some softened cream cheese on hand, and you spread generously softened cream cheese all over one side of the crescent rolls. And then you are going to roll each one of them up. I don't roll them up tightly. I kind of just fold them over 3 times. I think that's about right. And then you put the smallest side pointing up, and you space those evenly in your casserole dish. I really love breakfast casseroles that are forgiving. So for this one, for example, after you've got your crescent dough filled with cream cheese, rolled up, placed in your dish, you're going to whisk up whatever eggs you have on hand. It could be as little as 8. I probably wouldn't go less than 8. And it could be as much as a dozen. I don't know that I would go more than a dozen because then your crescent rolls are really going to get lost in the mixture, and it would probably also take a good bit more time to bake. But I have found that 8 to 10 is a sweet spot. And then you are going to add about a cup of milk. As you see, I hardly ever measure anything. That was a generous splash. It's probably a little under a cup. And then normally we will use sharp cheddar. That's our favorite go-to cheese for the most part. We do buy it from the grocery store. But today I had probably a little over a cup left once it was all shredded of good quality pepper jack cheese that I had purchased over the holidays to make Pioneer Woman's spinach and artichoke hot dip. So delicious. And I decided to go ahead and use the rest of that because I don't know when else I would use it. Normally, I add sausage or bacon or even both to this casserole, but today I am using what very little bacon I have left in our potato soup for the evening, and so I decided to use what was left of our ham for sandwich meat, our deli ham. I am just cutting that up really small, and I'm going to sprinkle it over the top of the crescent rolls before I pour my egg mixture. Of course, you could add veggies to this casserole and no meat at all if you didn't want to, or a little bit of both. That would have been delicious, but I was just keeping it simple, using what we've got. Now I'm going to mix together the eggs, shredded cheese, and milk really well before I add a little salt and pepper. I don't usually measure my salt and pepper. I gave one generous pinch of salt and then a few generous squeezes of black pepper, and then I'm mixing it all together before evenly pouring it over the whole casserole dish. Now the casserole is heading into the oven until it is finished. It was probably about 20 minutes or so. Now I took the scone dough out of the freezer and I just literally popped it upside down onto parchment paper and a cookie sheet, and I am just pressing it out in a circle until it is about a little over an inch thick. Now, some recipes will tell you to cut your scones before you bake them. I don't usually. Maybe I should. I don't know. I don't really know that it makes a difference. Although, I take that back. I think the whole reason behind that is that the edges of all of your slices end up getting baked a little more. You don't want it like soft and cakey in the center. That's not meant to be the texture of a scone. So maybe you should cut it beforehand. Now it is time to prepare the icing for the scones. I used the very last cup. It was probably a little under a cup of powdered sugar. So that is going to be going on my list of things to purchase once the pantry challenge is over. So I think the recipe called for a cup of powdered sugar, 2 to 3 tablespoons of cream, which I think I end up adding 5 or 6 before I finally got to a consistency where I could drizzle it with a fork or a spoon over the scones once they're finished. Also a pinch of salt and a splash of vanilla, and get it just to the texture that you would want. Initially, before I added a couple more tablespoons, it was the perfect texture for, say, spreading over cinnamon rolls, but I wanted to be able to drizzle it over the scones and I didn't want it to be super thick. Now that everything is ready for brunch and the food is just baking, I decided to clean up the kitchen. My son Charlie, who is 8 years old, has been on dish duty this week, and let's face it, 8-year-old boys, they need a little help with the dishes. So I've been letting him save the bigger things for me because one of the biggest problems, he's completely capable of washing them, but he makes a big wet mess. So I helped him out. Now I'm going to go ahead and do myself a favor and get supper started for this evening. We go to church in the morning and in the evening on Sundays, and it's really, really nice to come home from church and I have already milked the cow and I already have supper ready. Or, just about ready. And so that was my plan for tonight. I am putting these last 4 halves of bacon, 4 half pieces, back in the fridge. Somebody can eat those tomorrow morning, or multiple somebodies. And then I am cutting the other half into small bits, and I'm going to saute them in the Instant Pot with some onion, and we are going to make potato soup using canned potatoes from the pantry that I dry canned according to Ruth Ann Zimmerman's recipe, and I believe that is a Rebel canning method. I will not typically give you any tried and true pressure canning recipes on my channel. I'm just telling you what I do, and you are welcome to do whatever you are comfortable with. I don't use the saute feature very often in my Instant Pot, but I don't know why I don't. This was so quick and easy. The smell of bacon and onions sauteing together smells so good. This is the finished breakfast casserole. It looks delicious. It was really good with that creamy pepper jack cheese. Now I'm going to deglaze the bottom of my Instant Pot. I'm just going ahead and adding some home canned chicken stock because I'm going to use 2 quarts in this recipe. It's not a recipe. I'm just making it up as I go along. I'm using 2 quarts, which were not totally full. Well, they were before I pressure canned the potatoes, but then they shrunk down. I added 2 quarts of home canned potatoes. They were originally red potatoes. Then I started my Instant Pot on pressure cook on high for 5 minutes. I just wanted to get everything nice and soft so I could mash it up, and I even end up blending some. I'll show you in a minute. The scones are finished. They're hot, but not completely fresh out of the oven where everything is going to, the icing is going to just completely melt away. So I'm drizzling that all over the scones. I end up using the whole bowl because these scones are not overly sweet at all. I always like to have plenty of icing. Here you can see the icing did end up pretty much melting into the scones, which made them delicious. They were a huge hit. Everyone said they loved them just as much, if not more, than my blueberry muffin recipe. Here is one of my girls' plates. It was a delicious brunch and well worth the wait. Once I was finished with food, I decided to give myself a gel manicure. Years ago, I bought what I needed to do my own gel polish at home. It cost me about $40 or $50, which is about what it costs to get one gel manicure at the nail salon. So I save a ton of time and money doing it myself. And the thing is, I use my hands so much and wash them so many times throughout every day. Regular nail polish would not last one day on my nails without chipping and peeling off. So gel helps me not to pick up my cuticles in the winter when they're dry. And it also just makes my hands look a little nicer since they're dry and cracking in the winter. Now I am finishing off the potato soup. I added about 2 pounds of ground beef that I had browned yesterday. I added the remainder of the softened cream cheese that I had used to spread on the crescent rolls. And now I'm going to take 1 more quart of, I also added a can of cream of celery because it was random and in my pantry, so why not? Then I add 1 more quart jar of potatoes and a little bit of this broth from the pot to my Vitamix blender, and I blend it up until it's nice and smooth. Look, it almost looks like homemade hummus. I wanted to thicken the soup up a bit, and mashing up what was in there just wasn't quite doing it, and this was perfect. I also didn't really want to add another block of cream cheese. I added maybe half of one the first time. This was just right. So now it is ready to just be kept on warm, and it will be ready for us to eat when we get home from church. I really like taking some time on Sunday to set myself up for a really great beginning of the week. I love Mondays. You guys know, if you've been around here for a while, I used to publish my Monday with Me videos every single Monday because it just set me off on like a good positive snowball for the rest of the week if I had a good productive Monday. And so I feel like coming home from church tonight, supper will be ready, the kitchen will be tidy, and I can just relax with my family. And then tomorrow I will hit the ground running. Wait until you see my bedroom. It is an utter disaster. I'm actually really embarrassed because a good friend of mine stopped by with 2 of her daughters after church today so I could pierce their ears. She had purchased kits on Amazon, and her girls asked if I could do it instead of Mama. And so I happily obliged, and I was mortified to let them into my bedroom to get to my bathroom. So you guys can tackle that with me tomorrow. Thanks for watching.